Okay, today we're going to be talking about scary story writing. Now, half the reason I did this is because obviously October's coming up, so we always love a good scary story in October. But also, this can be applied even to your basic writing, right? Everyone needs a scary scene every once in a while. You know, a good murder mystery has, the spooky scene where the murderer's in the closet and the person's wandering around and you're like, oh no, please don't get murdered. So, you have scary scenes even in a typical regular story or in a fantasy story, right? Every time Harry Potter fights Voldemort, that's a scary moment where you're like, ah. So, scary scenes end up being in almost anything we write, whether it's just terrifying because of the suspense and the danger that they feel they're in, or whether it's scary because you will genuinely want to scare the pants off your readers. Another reason that I chose to do this is because the Scary Story Contest entries for the American Fork Library Scary Story Contest are due on October 7th, and yes, you can enter at any age. They have a kids, tween, teen, and adult category, I believe. So any age can enter. I think the only age that can't enter, obviously, is those that can't write. But you guys are obviously all here because you can put words on paper.
Just the baby scribbles all over. You win for your age. You're the only one who entered.
You're the only one who entered. Scribbles. Yep. So, but yeah, October 7th is when the entries are due for that, just because we usually like at least 2 weeks to grade the entries, and so we like to get the awards to you before Halloween. But yeah, so as long as you make sure it's by October 7th that you turn it in. I don't know if there's a time limit, because sometimes they're like before 5 o'clock or something like that. So just make sure it's before October 7th and you'll be golden. So, if you want to look at entry forms, those will be out there. All right, now, moving right along. So, the best thing that you can do to make a scene or a story scary is the setting. Now, I know a lot of people think it's kind of cheesy and cliche, the old abandoned laboratory and the haunted house, but the reason those work so well is because of the fact that genuinely people are already scared of them, and that setting helps evoke scariness. However, you can make almost any setting scary depending on how you describe it. For example, you could take this room and you could describe it as, having slate gray walls and having black chairs, and that's pretty normal. Exactly. That's when you start getting scary, when you're like, and the chairs were black as the darkness of someone's soul. That's going to make it far scarier than if you just say they're black chairs.
You walk in and you say, it was black as night. I walked around and
I'm feeling for the tables and the lights.
I felt something knocking to me.
Yes, exactly.
And then I remember the stories the janitor told me about the giant rats in the ceiling.
Giant rats in the ceiling. There you go. See, that's when you have setting is able to help you. So even if it's a setting that looks nice, you can make anything scary, in my opinion. You could take a meadow and theoretically make it scary if you just added the right elements. And so, like, feeling around in the dark is a great one. Another great one is just taking the description and making it eerie, comparing it to creepy, eerie things. Adding more details, exactly.
Because, like, if you just say the meadow was gray and spooky.
Exactly.
You don't feel that. You can say, I walked into the meadow and I was scared. I look around me. The grass is so tall, I can't see a thing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Detail's going to help you the most. Like you said, if you say it's just a spooky, scary meadow, we don't feel that. What evokes emotion is when you can feel what the character's feeling.
The tall grass is the worst because that's where the raptors hide.
Oh, dang. See, there you go. The tall grass is the worst because that's where the monsters hide. I like it. See, you guys already kind of know the setting can be changed to be scary, even if it's not originally a scary setting. That's why a lot of people change it.
Mm-hmm. It was beautiful, but if like you take it like, I was walking through the streets of Paris. I was lost. I turned and there was a black alleyway. I was walking and I heard a noise coming in.
Exactly.
And then
spooky,
like,
scary noises and being alone and the little jump scare moments. Exactly. Adding those things in just helps to give depth of character. And especially because of the fact that then you're able to add depth of character through their emotions. The more they feel scared, the more your reader's going to feel scared, for sure.
I sometimes get so connected with the book that I cry as the person, if one of the characters dies.
Yes, for character deaths. Oh, man.
Wait,
my heart.
Wait, has everyone here read all the Harry Potter books?
Well, we are doing a recording, so it's possible that whoever watches the recording might not, but I do know what you mean.
I was
There's so
so
many
sad
characters.
about it.
Just sobs. Yes, I feel you. So, that being said though, so with your setting, just remember to make sure that your details are thoroughly spooky and scary and that you can feel the spooky scariness. You don't just state it like a fact. You make sure you really show and don't tell. It's appropriate to tell in some instances if you're like, oh, hey, they really need to know this random magic detail, and so I'm going to have this other character tell this other character this random magic detail. But most of the time, it's better to show it in action because seeing the magic and seeing the scariness makes it so you can feel it a lot more tangibly.
Yeah.
So, next thing we're going to talk about is the unknown. Now, this seems counterintuitive because I know we just talked about showing. It's important to show as much of the setting and the main character as you can. Why? Because of the fact that that is going to amplify your connection to the character, and that's going to make sure that then when they feel scared, you also feel scared because you're scared for them and you're connecting to them and relating to them. But the reason the unknown is scary is because of the fact that we as people generally like things to be known, right? We like to say, this food that I'm eating is not poisoned. We like to know, hey, this building that I'm in is safe. Hey, this person that I met is who I think they are,
Hey, my hair is the right color.
Exactly. There's different things that are like, we like knowing things. We like the surety of being certain that we're safe, right? So the best thing you can do is take the setting and the character and amplify that detail, but then you want to peel back on the detail when it comes to the actual scary stuff. Why? Because having something mysterious bump into you is far more scary than having
in the movies, they're walking through something and they hear like a rustling behind them, like
yes,
that's
but they
one
don't
of the most
see
common
it.
scenes. And
Yes.
Like you could, like the character, like in a movie, you might like see like a rat tail come by, but they're like
Exactly. Or
and
like
then
you
they're
said,
walking and then they like bump into like a character. And
right. Or they bump into something else and they feel slime on their shoulder and they don't look down, but they're like, oh, gross. Oh, crap, there's something behind me. But that makes it so it's far more scary because you don't know what it is. And the unknown is scary to people. The more surety you have, the less scary it's going to feel to your readers because they're like, oh, well, it's just another random crazy person.
I like to rewatch movies because I'm not as scared the second time.
No, for sure. Rewatching definitely helps it be less scary the second time. And that's because you know for sure what's happening. Whereas the first time, the unknown is what makes it so and you're like, no, they're going to die. I'm scared. So it's important to make sure you show lots of detail when it comes to the character and the setting, but then when it comes to the monsters or the spookums and scarums, you peel it back and make sure that there's just enough mystery that you're not certain, especially with writing, because of the fact that your imagination is generally going to be scarier than anything you can describe. Because it might be scary in your head, but maybe to someone else that's not as scary. So if you leave it unknown, then the person can just imagine the scariest thing for them.
Yeah, because
Which makes it extra scary.
There's a large rat, and you're like, oh.
Exactly,
I
it's no longer
grow
scary.
up around rats.
Exactly, I like rats, so they're fluffy. What do you mean? Whereas
I mean,
if
they
you...
make carrot diseases, but everyone does.
Right. And so...
Large,
Ella could sense a presence around her.
Exactly, or even just a disgusting smell, or like I said, the slime on the shoulder where you're like, I don't know what beast is behind me, but it just drooled on me, so I'm gonna run, That makes it so it's more scary because you're like, I don't know what it is, but clearly it's big, clearly it's frightening, clearly it's something...
slimy.
Yeah, clearly it's slimy.
Or one of a good way to scare people is like, when you feel the slime on your shoulder, you turn around and it's just your puppy. Like you can have
exactly, jump scares.
It be really scary, and then it turns out to be so
Yes.
soft and cuddly. And
Yes.
They're like, oh my gosh, why did that get so worked up?
Yep. The unknown can definitely make it so you can do funny comedic twists too. Like, for example, one of my favorite children's books, I don't remember the title, but basically the whole idea is that he is a window washer, but he speaks with an accent, and so it says, I
want to.
I want to wash windows, but of course she can't really understand.
It's from scary stories to tell in the dark.
Yes. And so it's funny because by the time he gets back up there, she's like, oh, it's just a window washer. But because she didn't know who it was and she couldn't understand him, she's like, I don't know, some creepy guy's coming up the stairs. Like, it's far more scary.
I want to wash the window.
Exactly. It's far more scary if you don't know what's happening. So even for me, like I know in my apartment, if I'm alone in my apartment and I hear a clattering noise, I'm like, oh my gosh, what the heck was that? Whereas if I know my husband's home, I'm like, oh, it's probably just knocked something over or whatever. You know, I feel
especially if you're alone. Or
Exactly, if you're alone.
Who's just as cowardly as
Yes.
cowardly as you.
Who's just as jumpy.
Like
Yes.
your little sister, like she's clinging to your thigh.
And you're like, this is
she's
not
no
helping.
help. Yeah.
I'm extra scared now because you're no help. I'm no help. All right. So the next thing that you can do to make things scary, we're going to move on to the next thing, is the unique / the unexpected. Now the reason this is scary is because you take something that people like and you twist it to the dark side. So this, so the reason this is scary is because we like, again, that surety. For example, you like the surety of, hey, I know, yes, I like for sure knowing that you are who you say you are. That's why shapeshifters are so scary, right? Because the second you're like, I actually don't know if you're my friend or if you've come to kill me. So taking that unique and unexpected where you're like, so what is going on here? Like, what's different about this? Now, some people think that you always need a twist. We're going to talk about that later. You don't always need a twist.
Can I share something about a scary story I learned?
Mm-hmm.
So a scary story you learn is seeing the evidence of something really scary being left behind, but not actually seeing the thing. So like, in this scary story that I learned called the Demi Doll, there's this doll who goes around chopping people's heads off, and so when she goes to the she sees her brother's head on the floor and blood all over the curtains, but she doesn't see the doll.
Right.
When she goes to her parents' room, she sees the same thing. When she goes lying in bed, she hears an eerie voice saying, "It's the Demi doll."
Exactly. Seeing things that you don't know what the end is for sure
like
much
just seeing
scarier.
like random things, like you're walking in your office and you hear a crash behind you, and your coffee mug that was on the table is on the ground.
Exactly.
Or,
And you're like,
and
I know
walking
no
around.
one's in here.
That's why you grab the A. That's when you grab the AK.
Nope. No ghost for me.
And it's also actually, especially if you're alone and you have like no weapon, like
For sure. It
can be funny.
amplifies that
If,
scariness.
like, it can be funny if you grab a chair, like who's there?
Right, grab an unknown weapon for sure.
Yeah.
That's in some ways why, for me, I love murder mysteries, is because it's so much scarier, like being like, there's a murdered person, but you
In
have
the
no
house.
idea what happened, and so there's a person murdered
Like,
in the
you know
house.
something
but now
scary's
what?
in the house, but you don't know when it's
Yeah, you don't know when,
you
or
don't know how, you don't know
or
where.
if you're, or if it's one of those murder mysteries like Clue, where you're like, there's 10 people here, any one of you could be the murderer.
Yeah, and, like,
It's like,
there's multiple suspects, and you're like afraid to approach anybody.
Exactly.
Kind of like Among Us.
Exactly, kind of like Among Us, or the game Werewolf too. So Werewolf is kind of like Among Us, but basically you play it in a group of friends instead of a video game. So you have one person who's the werewolf, and then you have the rest of them who are regular people, and you're basically trying to figure out who the werewolf is.
Another scary thing is like, kind of like werewolves, if like you know who the scary person is, but like you know that they will become a murderer on a special night. Like
Right,
like
so you know
werewolves,
they're
like,
fine now, but
like,
they might not be later.
Yeah, like, hey, are you a werewolf? And you're like Lupin, like you know Professor Lupin.
For sure.
Like, yes, but you gotta stay away from me.
Just so. Yep.
Like that, it can be scary when you know you're with somebody who could hurt you anytime. Like
For sure.
like they're friendly one moment, kill them the next.
Right, exactly. And so that thing that makes you so unnerved and so scared is because of the fact that it's unexpected and that it's unique. So feel free to take ideas that you're like, I don't think, for example, I don't know, ladybugs are scary at all. You can theoretically make a ladybug scary.
Poisonous.
Exactly, that's poisonous, and so anytime it
Or a
lands on
ladybug
someone.
that when exposed to daylight, it's a ladybug. When exposed to night, it's giant carnivorous monster.
Ooh, I like it. I
Or
like it.
the
See, there you go.
ladybugs crawled out of her eye.
Ooh, man.
Your eyes, like if you touch the ladybug, your eyeballs pop out and ladybugs crawl out of your
Ooh,
eyes.
boy. You guys have some great scary ideas.
Yeah, we might even win the scary contest.
I certainly hope so. But yeah, so taking the unique and the unexpected can make it so that it's even more scary because once again, it's the unknown where you're like, I was certain that thing wasn't scary, and now I'm not.
Yeah. Like, are you a werewolf?
Am I sure that you're not a shapeshifter who's gonna stab me? Like, concern.
Concern. But luckily nowadays we know that magic doesn't exist.
That's fair.
Unless somebody's out there to get you
Exactly.
who has the rare power of magic.
So,
I like to weave magic into any part of
oh,
my
for
video.
sure. Magic, it can be fun even if it's softer magic or like intense magic, for sure.
Yeah.
So, the next thing we're going to talk about is actually sentence length, which sounds weird because you're like, it's just a sentence.
Or you could take
But you can actually change sentence length to make it feel different. For example, a lot of scary story authors talk about the fact that when they use shorter sentences to induce panic. Why? Because technically, when there's a period, you're supposed to take a breath, right? That's a pause in the sentence.
Mhm.
So if you have a bunch of short sentences, what are you doing? Panic!
Yeah.
You're automatically breathing heavy. You're like, oh my gosh, anxiety.
Yeah.
And-
Can I share something real quick?
Yeah.
So, you know how you were talking about the scary things later before you said the sentence length?
Yeah.
So, I forgot what I was going to say. Go ahead.
That's okay.
When it comes
happens.
to me, I'll let you know.
For sure. Then, so with the shorter sentences, I would say make sure that they're not cut off sentences. And now the reason I say this is just because you want to induce panic, but you also want it to be easy to read.
Well,
So-
so if like it's an advanced thing like Harry Potter might be in the middle of a sentence.
Right.
And a crash interrupts him. He's like, oh guys, we better get out of crash.
Exactly. So having interrupted sentences is perfectly fine. It's more like when it gets to ones where people do sentences that are like 2 words long and it doesn't make sense. And it's
Yeah,
not an
right.
interruption. So it's like short sentences are good, but you got to make sure that they're, like you said, they're interrupted. Or if they're short sentences, you make sure that they're intense
in a
ones,
book.
like it was behind me. I think it's still behind me. It's right behind me. Those are all short sentences.
Yeah, I'd be like, I just heard something. Hey guys, where are you? Another
Exactly.
crash. Closer to you. Crash. Closer
You're
to you.
like,
Crash.
oh
Oh my
my-
gosh, I feel a breath on my neck.
Exactly. So having those shorter sentences definitely makes it so you get that kind of goosebump chill factor.
Yeah.
Now longer sentences, this is better for when you're doing stuff like
Murder mystery.
Murder mystery, exactly. This helps create tension and anxiety because this is more like those moments you see in the scary movies, you know, where the person's walking towards the door and you're like, don't open it, gosh darn it, don't open it. And the person's still walking towards the door.
Ring, ring. Yeah, I wonder who that is at this time tonight.
The reason why they make those scenes so long is because the whole time your anxiety is going, oh my gosh, stop.
And other times, like one step, heartbeat.
Mhm.
One
Exactly.
step,
The heartbeat effect can definitely be very interesting too
And
because
music.
it helps amplify. And music, for
And,
sure.
like, I know we're talking about books, but music is just like
Music is
kind
very
of like
powerful.
short, like
Mhm.
like creepy music. One time I did this escape room,
Mhm.
and it wasn't scary at all. It was just about this lab person who
Mhm.
created it.
But having music can
Yeah,
definitely
the music
add a
was
theme.
so scary that I was hypervading. Like I was like, I couldn't focus on any of the clues.
Yep, and that's
Like,
probably why they did it, right?
Yeah.
To try and make it so it was harder and,
And
more
I was
complex.
begging them for instead of ending just to turn off the music.
Just please stop the music. Yeah, no, for sure.
Next time I'm definitely bringing headphones.
When it comes to this type of thing, the kind of similar effect you can create in writing is having poetic wording.
Or what?
Because that can help give the idea of kind of music, and especially depending on the type of wording. For example, if you use words with a large downbeat, now I know this is, again, a more poetic concept, but if you use words with a large downbeat and you use them over and over, that can feel more like footsteps or like a heartbeat. That can give a beat to a sentence.
Or like boom, boom.
Exactly.
These footsteps were heavy on the floor.
Exactly. Or you can use long, eloquent words to make it seem almost like a spindly spider's web. That again adds a different creepy feel to it.
Yeah.
And so it's all about the stylistically, what kind of feel are you going for? Are you going for big, heavy, intense, or are you going for
Soft, mysterious.
Exactly, soft and wispy, mysterious. And so that kind of, those longer sentences can help with adding that tension and that anxiety into the person's feelings. Speaking of adding tension and anxiety for mystery.
Will we be able to write today?
Yes, absolutely. I only do hour-long lessons, and we only have a half an hour left.
What?
So.
It's already been 30 minutes?
Yeah, it's wild.
I'm glad you're having fun.
Yeah. So, yes, we will definitely be able to write today. But yeah, so with, as we said, murder mystery is one of the most popular ones where it has scary scenes but isn't just scary.
Yeah.
Mystery helps to add intrigue.
And cliffhangers are
And cliffhangers are a good one too.
Good one.
For sure. With mystery, it helps you to want to keep reading. Why? Because you want to solve it. You want that positive insurance that you know you're
that's
safe.
why I really like Sherlock.
Yes, like
mystery.
Sherlock and different things like that, because you solve the mystery at the end. So even though
And
you're
then-
really intense, you are like, oh, it's all better.
Can I tell you a story about a Sherlock thing I heard? So, the mother of a baby was found with her teeth in the baby's neck, sucking
Mhm.
blood. And but then it turned out, Sherlock cracked the case, is that the older brother was poisoning him, and the only way to get the poison out of the baby is if poison was being sucked out by someone's mouth.
That
So
makes
the mother
sense.
was really helping him, and Sherlock finally cracked the case, but like the entire
It
book,
looked like a vampire.
it looked like she was a vampire.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
like, something like really, really scary, like,
That makes it seem one way, and
and
then
then
you're
it
like,
turns out to be another way.
yes. And so that mystery
And
makes
just
it
like
so
the
you just want to keep reading for that relief. And so it helps to make it extra scary, because you're like, I want to keep reading, but I'm still terrified, but I want to keep reading because hopefully they'll catch him. You know?
Yeah, totally.
The next element that you need to think of is survival. Now, this adds a
Survival.
different scary element because we all want to generally live, right?
Yeah, unless you're like,
unless
unless you're my uncle.
unless you're cursed and concerned about like life, or stuff is just really, really
Or
rough.
suicidal thoughts.
Or suicidal thoughts. In that case, please get help. I really care about you guys. Please get help if you're thinking anything like that. But that being said, survival is generally a basic instinct that we all have. And that being said, it makes it so that, and sometimes even if you have depression or anxiety or different things like that, sometimes you can add the survival element in your story of they want to help someone else survive. You know, they might not be in it for them, but
Or
they're
like,
like,
you
my
know-
sister, though. I want to save them.
Or like, I read this book about a boy who was illegally born,
Mhm.
and so like police are after him.
No, yeah, for sure.
And like his family's like, hide here, we'll distract them.
Exactly.
Like they want to help other people survive when they're illegally born.
Right.
Like
and so,
yeah,
yeah, I remember that. Trevor Noah, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah, it was really good. But with that being said, survival is generally something that even if you aren't like terribly concerned, like for example, the classic haunted house idiots who are like, yeah, we'll go into a haunted house. It doesn't matter that several people died here. And then once you're in the house, you're like, ah, crap. I don't know.
Well, like,
You brought my
another
bro-
really scary effect is like you walk in and the door slams behind you.
Yes. And so you're like,
Or like
I'm not concerned, and then the door slams behind you, and you're like, oh crap, I just brought my little brother into a very haunted house. Concern.
Just every YouTuber goes into a haunted house, door slams. This is going to be a fun night, guys.
That's
Yeah.
fair. So you can be in less than a concern, but generally survival helps make sure that you, as a reader, feel that panic that your
I
main
feel
character's
like
feeling.
almost every book. I get so
Mhm.
connected with the characters,
Yes, because-
even if the book is sloppily written.
Because when you're connected with the characters, that makes it so that the emotions are far more intense. So when they're like, oh crap, I might die here, then you're concerned about that.
I can't die. I need to save my family's honor.
Or all sorts of different motivations, right? I need to save my family, or I need to get out of here just because I'm like, I don't want to die here.
I've got a family, people. I don't want to die.
Right.
Nobody does.
So it's like it helps you to make sure that you have something that the reader can connect to and can relate to. And even if they can't relate to that, like you said, they can relate to wanting to survive for someone else or to protect someone else. And with that being said, the last thing that you can do for survival is make sure it genuinely feels like a survival situation. If they're just wandering around and nothing really happens and it's kind of spooky, creepy, but like whatever, that's not
You
going
have
to
to
be
make sure like
exactly.
you can like hear like where are they? Search the room. Like
Exactly.
you can, like if you could have one of the characters like wait, like you could have one of the characters say like wait, pause, here's something, and then you could like describe in the book that the policeman or like downstairs like search the house.
Exactly.
And then that, like,
or you can describe things that are like, oh, well, I'm not that scared, and then all of a sudden, like you said, the door slams behind you.
Or a coffee, or something shatters.
Something shatters. Or you have the classic, they're walking around the house and, they swear they see something. But did they see something?
Yeah.
And then it continues to happen. And then they turn around and, like you said, the evidence of something scary where they turn around and their friend's missing and they're like, where'd you go?
Elvis.
Exactly.
Elvis. Oh my gosh.
I'm pretty sure are they dead? Are they missing? Why are they gone? How come I didn't see them leave? All those types of things can add to a survival setting.
You can also say like, this is not a joke.
Exactly.
This is not funny.
Because a lot of people do think it's a joke. We have a lot of people that, your friend or your sibling can jump out and try to scare you.
Yeah.
So like,
oh my gosh, this is not funny. Just get back here, you.
right. And then they turn around and they're dead. And they're like, oh my gosh, it wasn't a joke. I'm in trouble.
Mom is going to kill me.
That's true too.
Okay, like you could turn around, like maybe it's like a humor scary.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah, it could be humorous.
You turn around. Little bro? John?
And you're like, oh, what's going on here?
And then you see like next slit.
And you're
next
like,
slit open. Mom is gonna kill me.
Just, oh crap. So I gotta say, it definitely helps to amplify that intensity when you have survival situations or when you have mysteries you want to keep reading.
Or like you're injured and you're being chased by someone.
And you're like, oh crap, I can't get away from this thing, but I need to because otherwise I won't live. With so mystery and survival both help us to want to keep reading. Because the thing about scary stories, if you scare people too bad, they don't want to keep reading. However, if you have a survival situation for the character or a mystery situation, that makes it so they want to keep reading because they want the mystery to be solved. They want the person to get out okay. And so because they want that insurance of having them be safe and okay, they'll keep reading, even though it's still scary. So it's about making sure that it's scary, but not so scary that they're like, I don't care how good this mystery is, I'm out.
Yeah, because in like Goosebumps, my mom hates us reading because it's too scary.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that scary.
Well, I've never read a single book in my entire I've never read a single book.
Oh yeah, and everyone has different rules as far as what's scary.
Goosebumps book because my mom hates them and she says that I can't read them until
yeah.
I'm out of
I
them.
bet they scarred her when she was little.
No, yeah, that can happen sometimes for sure, where they get too scary or too intense, or you read it when you're too little. That can be a part of the thing too. Is you got to make sure you're writing for the appropriate age group.
Yeah, and you can say only for ages blah.
Exactly. So when you write a young adult book, generally it's going to be more like 12 to 18.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're writing an adult book, that you can make it far scarier because generally it's going to be people who are 18 and older.
Yeah.
So generally it's just important to keep in mind what your age group is. For example, the reason why there's almost no scary stuff for little kids is because little kids don't like being scared.
Unless it's like
There's a ghost.
there's like a ghost
Yes.
and then it's chasing them and it turns to be a friendly ghost.
Exactly, it turns out to be a friendly
That's
ghost, like Casper and
normally,
things like that.
Yeah, like Casper.
Yeah.
That's lame. Scarred the kids young.
No.
Get scarred.
I mean, to be fair, that is how the Grimm brothers were, but let's not. They were
No, they
special.
were writing for adults, not kids, and the kids are like, "This is fun. It has so much fun in it. Now read it to me."
Yeah, no. So the Grimm brothers were a
I
pair
don't
of.
even know what a Grimm brothers.
So
Explain
the
it.
Grimm brothers were a pair of brothers who wrote a whole bunch of different fairy tales, most of the original fairy tales, like Cinderella and stuff like that. Only I would not read the original Cinderella by the Grimm brothers because
It's bloody.
it's scary, it's bloody, it's messed up. So they wrote a lot of these original fairy tales, or at least
And
penned
Jennifer.
them, and it got them edited and published. But as a result of that, a lot of them ended up being children's stories, even though they were
Because
very
it's
much
about
not children's
Because
stories.
like Cinderella may be bloody, like in a bit, but they see like a beautiful princess wearing
Right,
a dress. And
exactly.
like, oh, it's a princess, but Mom, read it.
And then immediately the stepmother gets murdered, and you're like, oh. And so it gets kind of dark. So that's why I say the Grimm brothers are the exception to that rule, because they were writing also for a different generation when the world was a little bit of a darker place.
Okay.
So,
I mean, the world still is a dark place in some other places.
for sure, it definitely is. I guess I just
And
mean
then-
we have enough that we can be a little bit more protected and not immediately die if we go walking through the woods at night.
I mean, like, there are some books that,
Chase them.
there are, like, some books
Mhm.
that, like, I'm shocked by how much death there is. Like,
No, for sure.
Because, like,
It's
I'm,
dark
like,
and it's intense.
most of the time, when I read, like a fantasy book,
Yeah.
the main character dies, and then, like, I'm like, ugh, the author wouldn't have made that character die. And then, like, later in the book, he comes back to life in, like, this miraculous way. And
Yeah.
so, in, like, these haunted books, they're just, like, death, death, death. I'm, like, shocked by how much death there is.
Right, because a lot of the times, either, especially for more of a junior fiction to young adult age group, people don't like to have as much dark stuff in there because of the
I love
fact.
dark stuff.
No, for sure, I'm not opposed to it. I guess I just mean people. It depends on who you are, because some people don't like dark stuff as much. Some people do like dark stuff, so it depends on who you're writing for and what genre, as well. That being said, got
Wait.
off. Huh?
What books have you read?
I've read almost,
Scary books.
like, I
So-
don't know all the names, but I've read so many.
So
Like,
we
a
can
ton.
discuss.
Name one that's dark.
We
Okay.
can discuss a
Well,
little bit more after the lesson, okay, guys?
The
So,
starters have read all the Harry Potter books.
all right. So,
What about-
using the point of view that makes the reader relate to the main character. So, I will say that you can break this rule because some people have. However, most of the time, most of the scary stories and most scary story authors recommend doing third person limited or first person. Why?
First person is when you are the character, and third person is when you're like, it's kind of like when you're a different character, but you're not the main character.
So yeah, with first person, it's like reading through someone else's eyes. It's like reading someone's diary where they're like, I went and did this. And so you know it's not you directly, but at the same time you're reading about someone in enough of a first person that when you read it, it feels more immediate. Because it's like I said, it's like reading someone's
You.
diary. It's very personal. So with, then there's second person, which is like, you do this, you do
Yeah,
that,
like
you do that.
Ella was like, you're just a narrator, like you're
Right.
describing the scene.
Exactly. That's more of a third person limited where you say, you know, Ella did this, Ella did that, and
Yeah.
that's more third person. Now, the reason first person and third person limited, again, you can break this, are most preferred is because of the fact that that means you don't ever know all the information.
Yeah, because that makes it more unexpected.
It makes it more
scary,
unexpected
unknown.
and unknown and scary, like we've talked about before.
But
So-
sometimes I like to do it in my book. Sometimes
Mhm.
I pretend I'm the person, and I'm like, okay, whoa, let's stop this book real quick. And I say, okay, I just want to let you know, you'll read about me later in the book. I'm like, I pretend I'm a different character, and sometimes every now and then I like stop the story and I describe a little bit. I'm just like, just let you know, Ella did not know anything about this. She did not know what she's doing. She did not know that she was going to agree to suicide. Ella did not know any of this. And then, like, because I didn't give very much details, but I gave enough for the reader to be scared.
Right.
They're like
then
even
you're
more
like,
scared.
What do you mean about this cultist, suicidal cult? This is concerning. So it's like, this makes it so you're a lot more concerned about them because you're like, this is scary.
And then, like, but you're like connected so much to the character,
Right.
you feel like you can't stop
You
reading.
feel like you can't stop reading because you're like, hey, I really want to figure out, does she make it out of this crazy cult that stabs people and makes people agree to being stabbed? Like, this is concerning. You know, like, how am I going to make sure she gets out of this?
Waffles cool.
Waffles Cult. Yeah, that's fair. We play Dungeons and Dragons as well here, and he's part of that. And well, that's Waffles is an interesting villain. Anyway, he's very chaotic and crazy. So that being said, though, that's why third person and first person make it so relatable. And you can, like I said, break the fourth wall. You can do second person. I actually did one where I did a choose your own story for scary stories.
Those ones are really hard.
Those are
because-
hard. Mhm.
Because you don't know how many pages you're going to need.
Right, exactly.
Like,
And so
and you
it was
don't know,
definitely
like-
difficult. It was not easy for sure. But I've done it before, so my point is basically saying you can break these rules. But if you do follow the first person or third person limited rule, it's generally easier. So here's easy. If you want to do something hard, go ahead. Just know it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
Just be aware.
Don't get frustrated when you find out this is hard and you're like, oh, this is going to be
you're picking the hard thing. So be aware it's going to be hard. All right. The next one that I wanted to talk about actually was the fact that you don't always need a plot twist. A lot of people assume that just because it's scary, you have to have a plot twist. You have to have it so that way it's like,
kind of like the story I was talking about.
Yeah, with Sherlock Holmes.
It was a vampire.
Right, which is, twists can be cool, where I'm like, I love that twist, and even as you described it, I'm like, that's a cool idea, and so twists can definitely make it so it's more interesting.
Yeah.
However, you don't always need it. In some ways, having things that aren't twisted can be just as scary. I wouldn't recommend it because it's definitely not a kid's show, but there was a scary movie that I was watching. And
what's it called?
I don't remember what it's called. All I know is that it is definitely PG-13.
And I was watching a movie called Megan. Have you watched Megan?
But I have not. But the whole idea is that you download this app, and the app tells you how long you have before you die. And basically, before you die. Yeah, so it's basically telling you, like, you could live 84 years. And so people will download the app and they'll be like, I'll be 84 years old, I'll be fine. And then there are other people who are like, oh crap, I have 1 day to live. What do you mean I have 1 day to live? This is stupid. And then they'll try to undownload the app from their phone, and the app won't undownload. And they're like, this is weird. And then they start looking through the agreement in the app, and in the agreement of the app it says, if you download this app, you have to die at this time. You can't cheat death. And it's like, hold on, I didn't read that fine print. And so it's all about the main character trying to get out of it, and how she's like, I don't want to die though. I don't want this to happen. And so she's trying to cheat the system and cheat the code. And all along the way, there are people who are dying.
How long did it say in the movie?
And so in the movie, I think it was 4 days for her. So she had some time, but there were other people. The reason she knew it was going to happen is because she was a nurse, and she had 3 other people who said, hey, my girlfriend downloaded this app and it said she'd die, and then I got in a car accident and she died, and things like that. And so she's like, crap, this might actually happen. It might actually be real. And she starts realizing it might be real, and especially because there was one guy who was like told he was going to die in 2 days, and and he was supposed to go into, and he was supposed to have this thing happen to him, and he didn't end up going and doing that thing. And so as a result, he died of a heart attack, but he was 20 years old. The likelihood of someone who's young and healthy dying of a heart attack isn't possible. And so that's when she's like, this app is going to kill me? And so she starts having to figure out a way out of it. But the way the movie ends,
my story just like that.
But the way the movie ends,
and she ends up cheating death.
And she ends up cheating death because she finds out that if you kill someone else who has a longer timer, then you can cheat that because
she killed her.
However, the person was an evil person. So she found someone who was like, I have 84 years left to live, and he was an absolutely terrible person. She knew he had done terrible things. And so she was like, if I kill him, not only will the world be a better place because he's evil, but also that means I can live longer. So it's like, yeah, so she's trying to win-win. But
I would not be able to live with myself.
Oh no, I know. It was a wild story. Like I said, it's a dark movie. That's why I like to know about it. She did end up killing the guy, but the whole time, like you said, she's feeling like, I don't know, like you said, she's like, this is crazy. Like, I know he's a bad guy, but this is still crazy.
I think I'm going to do it, except I'm going to make it so she doesn't kill him on purpose. So I'm going to make it so she was about to shoot a gun at him, and she's like, I can't do it. And she aims at the ceiling, and then she hits a chandelier, and the chandelier just
dead anyway.
Poof! And I'm wow, win-win. I didn't kill him on purpose.
But yes, so with that being said, though, there was no twist in that, right? She was trying to defeat this app. The app was going to kill her ultimately. There was no twist. It just was the way it was.
I am going to make
my
story just like that. Just like that.
But it's still good. It's still good, and it was still intense. It was still scary. But what made it scary was the fact that it didn't overcomplicate it. So twists are meant to make it actually simpler. So like you said with the one vampire Sherlock thing, it actually was simpler in the long run, where you're like, oh, this makes perfect sense. So
yeah, because and the reason the his brother tried to kill the other brothers because he wasn't getting any more attention.
No, yeah, jealousy.
Jealousy.
Makes sense. So with that being said, though, it makes it so that twists are perfectly acceptable just so long as it makes sense. If you're overcomplicating it, that can actually make it less scary.
And more confusing,
And
which
more
makes
confusing.
the reader. I have just like started reading a book and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't even understand a word this dude says.
Right.
And I have to like throw it out the window.
If it's confusing, then you don't want to read it, for sure. You want to make sure you don't confuse
I
your reader.
normally love to read confusing books, but that one that I read was so confusing I couldn't make a word out.
Right.
What was the book?
If it's
I don't remember. It
complex,
was a long time ago.
if it has complexity, that's good. We like complex stories. We like complex plots and twists and unsure things. But we don't. What we don't like as readers is things that are so confusing that we're just like, okay, whose perspective are we in now? Why did they do that
Yeah, and
thing?
in some books, they like each chapter they switch to someone else's perspective.
Right.
And that one's confusing, but I have read one and it was amazing. But like, and then
It also
people's
depends on
end up
how the
meeting
author
up.
does it. Yeah, exactly. It
Like
also depends
sometimes
on how
like
they do it.
when they're like, okay, they start off like talking about a girl named Jane, and the next chapter about a boy named Mark.
Right.
And then there's 4 people in the book, and they keep switching off, like doing different perspectives.
You're okay.
Perspectives. And then the 4 meet up.
Right.
And then like it becomes one
So-
story because they're all together.
Because they're all together. Yeah, so with perspectives, you can have it so they all meet up, or if you're doing different perspectives, you can use it to amplify the scariness. Like I said, generally, it's harder to do that, but it is possible. I know, for instance, there was a murder mystery show that I was watching, and it was really cool, actually, because you got to see the perspective of the murderer, and then you got to see the perspective of
The victim.
and so the way they are slowly coming together, it's very scary.
Just the
And the
victim
reason
just
the murderer
standing
did
there,
it.
then he's
Yeah.
like, why does my back hurt?
Yeah,
Like-
or even just different things where there are other ones I've seen where they'll do like a police story, right? So they'll have the policeman and his partner policeman, and they'll be in 2 different spots at the same time, but they're both like, wait, so why is the murder, there's this murder that looks exactly like this other murder, but it's 20 miles apart. How could he have done this? And different things like that. And so they're slowly like trying to pull the murderers together and figure out how it
Like
all
maybe they were
connects.
twins because they were
Exactly.
wearing the same
He
thing.
was the
Right, and
he
so
was
trying to
the
figure out how it
best
connects.
sharpshooter of them
Oh,
all. He could shoot someone
holy
from
cow.
30 miles away.
Dude, you'd have to be Superman. Anyway, so that being said, though, it makes it so that it adds a complexity.
And I was doing it at the exact same time, so it was impossible to
Right.
quickly do the heist and go do the other heist.
Right, exactly.
But it turned out to be twins.
So
And they were
complexity,
the same thing.
complexity for sure is good. Confusion is bad, complexity is good. So it's important to make sure that you have someone read over your story to make sure that it's complex, not confusing.
Yeah, because it's hard to tell the difference between
It's hard.
those 2.
It's for sure hard. One is appropriate confusion that's done well, and the other is confusion that's just sloppily put together like chaos.
Yeah, I read that book like once and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the worst book in history. And it won a Nobel Prize. So I'm like, who gave the Nobel Prize? Who reviewed it? Who like gave
That
it
happens
stars?
sometimes. I'll be honest, that happens. I was actually a part of a short story writing contest, and I didn't win, but someone else won, and I was like, oh, cool, I'll see who won. It wasn't here, luckily. Generally, I agree with pretty much every person who's ever won at the American Folk Library judgings. I will say they do a much better job at judging. But this was more like an international short story thing. And I was like, and I lost, and I was like, oh, whatever. And so I was like, I'm going to read the first place. I was like, I don't know what is even happening here. What just...
There was this weird story I read. Like, I couldn't figure out the perspective at all. It didn't make any sense.
Yeah, so that can happen sometimes, for sure.
Sometimes I'm like, am I the person who's being like who doesn't understand this? Am I a bad reader, or
Right.
is it the book that's
I
bad?
think it was
Is it the
a
book that's bad, or is it me?
non-fiction book, so that kind of makes sense, but...
No, yeah, it
I'm
can
not
get
sure.
confusing. It can get confusing. So it's important to have people read over it. That's why people have what's called beta readers. Now, beta readers basically do the job of making sure that it's not too confusing or that it's scary, making sure that all the elements you want to be in there are in there and that you're not missing anything.
Sometimes, like publishing companies read a paper and they're just mind blown. Guess
Yeah.
what happened? So J.K. Rowling sent in her first book for Harry Potter, and this dude almost got fired, and he did a terrible job at the publishing company. He just picked something off of all of
No,
them.
yeah. It was
They're
on the
stacked.
rejection pile.
Like the rejection pile is like
Mhm.
a pile of books that have already
yeah.
gone through and been rejected.
Right.
And the dude like read it, he's like, who rejected this and why?
Because this is a problem. Yeah,
This is
for
a
sure.
good book.
Yes, it happens for sure. That definitely happens.
It just
She
depends
got
on.
rejected by Disney,
Oh gosh.
then Scholastic published.
Holy cow, that's impressive. See, that's the funny thing about all these different things, though. I want you guys to be aware of, and I know this is a tangent, this isn't necessarily about scary stories, but I want to make sure you guys know, publishing is hard. It's not that you're a bad writer if you get rejected. That's absolutely not
Because
the
J.K.
case.
Rowling was the best, and she got rejected.
And she got rejected, and Jennifer Nielsen,
Can
I
I
know
say
that
something?
she's some of my favorite stuff.
J.R. Tolkien got rejected by 3 different companies before his book got published.
No, for sure. And I gotta say, and then there's also all sorts of different other ones, like I know Jennifer Nielsen, she said that she has a binder full of rejection letters, and she's considered a New York Times bestseller now. And then Stephen King, he's literally the king of horror, and freaking Stephen King, he said that he put a nail on his wall, and every time he got a rejection letter, he just put it on the nail, and he's like, I'll be fine. He ran out of space on the freaking big long nail on the
Just
wall.
multiple railroad
Exactly.
spikes.
And it's not that he was a bad writer, it's just that he hadn't found the right publishing company yet.
Because some publishing companies focus on different like genres.
Oh, for sure, different genres, and sometimes it's just not even, sometimes people just don't even like your style necessarily, but someone else loves your style. And so
And-
it's not about you, it's about them.
And sometimes I get very mad that most
Mhm.
books have a boy main character. Like my
That is
favorite
fair.
series, I Survived.
Mhm.
You know that series.
Mhm.
So it's, yeah, every single one except for 3 books is all boy main characters.
Oh, yeah.
So like I'm so frustrated. Like, what girls need time to like? Girls want to be books in books too.
I gotta say, if you like fantasy and you like girl main characters, Keeper of the Lost Cities is one.
Oh my gosh,
highly
I read
recommend.
all of it.
It's so good.
It
It's
is
so good.
so good. Sophie, like
She's awesome.
she's awesome.
But yeah, all right. So
He's
back on
better than
back on
Sophie.
topic. Okay,
I think it's cool.
you can think that. I don't disagree. They're all cool characters. They're all awesome. All right. So, the last thing that I'm going to mention before we wrap up the lesson is for scary stories, the danger needs to feel real. Now, the reason I say this is because sometimes with fantasy and supernatural stuff,
They
you
don't
get-
feel real.
They
They
don't
just
feel
feel like,
real.
oh, this is such a cool book. But
Right.
it doesn't like feel like it's actually
Right.
happening in real
That's
life.
why magic rules are important. That's why the details are important. That's why the world building's important, because adding all these complex details like the world building, the magic rules, and things like that make it feel more real. If you have a magic system with no rules, it's not going to feel as real.
But what you could do is you could have a magic system with no rules, and then one of the main characters comes in and stops the chaos, and like you could
You can change it,
compare
for
that.
sure.
No, you can compare that to our messed up society.
Hmm.
So like you could
Very
say
true.
you could like feel like it.
Yeah,
Can be
no,
real.
for sure. I agree. I guess I'm just saying, when you want something to be real, you definitely want to, like you said, compare it to our own society and say, how can I make this related to something real? So I like that. You can you don't have to have rules, you don't have to have this, but the reason rules help is because we're used to rules in society,
Yes.
right? We're used to all these arbitrary things where it's like, oh, you can do that, but only if you write it in blue pen, and it's like, why?
What the heck?
It's like,
I'm allowed to write a book, but only if I use blue pen.
right, and so it's
What
like,
the heck?
But people do. They have arbitrary rules. I know that for publishing companies that happens sometimes too, where they're like, we will only accept your manuscript if it's in this font, and different things like that. And so it's like, it's weird. And
Now,
You're
sometimes
the
when
best
it's
teacher.
important,
Thank you.
there's sometimes when it's important. Like they say not to use red pen in schools. That way the teacher can actually grade
Right,
you
can
without
actually
it
grade them.
being-
So
Yeah,
sometimes
because
they are important.
sometimes the students write A plus on their own papers,
Right,
And
and
so
you're
instead of writing, they think, oh, the teacher must have really sloppy handwriting, but she graded it A plus.
It's like,
A plus 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 plus. Well, it says so, so it's true.
But yeah, so it's important to take into effect that you want it to feel relatable. You want it to make sure that it's not something that makes it so that when you're reading, you're like, oh, well, that would never happen in real life. You want them to feel like, well, you know, if magic did exist, that could happen.
Yeah, and like, you know how I felt like Sophie's world, like in the Keeper of the Lost Cities, could be real because
For sure.
of
I
how complex their rule system was.
For sure, the Keeper of the Lost Cities
Like-
world building is phenomenally well done.
I know, and then another thing that the one thing that kind of got me like that I didn't think was real was like that people didn't want money in that world. Like they
Yeah,
were
that
born
was-
with tons of money. That was confusing.
That was a little confusing, for sure.
Because like mainly the bad characters they're fueled by money.
Most of the time, yeah.
All these like magical items and stuff, like the pathfinders and stuff, they
That's
like
fair.
use light.
That's
I
fair.
know, and like moonlight and that kind of stuff. It's just really confusing, but it was so well done. That's
It's
like one of
very
my
well done.
favorite books.
For sure, and especially because of the fact that we in society feel like a lot of villains, like you said, are motivated by things like money or greed in
Or
real
power.
life, or power. But that's part of the reason why it's so interesting, and I think that's why she did it, to explore villains that don't want those things.
And they just well, actually, he wanted power, but he didn't
Right.
want money
Money, which
because he has $1,000. Like,
yeah.
More
So
than
with that, with that being said, though, that's why it's fun to play around with those dynamics, because yes, your villain needs a motive, but that doesn't always mean they need the same motive as every other villain. They can be
Yeah.
unique and original motives. for
Waffles
sure.
has all the motives.
Oh boy, he's
In one package.
special. Yep.
wait, I'm confused. Who's
So-
Waffles?
The most
So-
nightmarish of nightmarish villains.
We-
My cousin created this character that is the absolute bane of everyone's existence.
So, we play Dungeons and Dragons. I am the person who mainly tells the story, and then their characters interact with the story. And his cousin created this basically evil character that just wanted to completely throw the world into chaos, just for the sake of the fact that he thought it would be more interesting and more fun. And so as a result of that, now he's become even more powerful, and I'm controlling his character. And basically his whole thing is, the world isn't fun enough, so I'm going to make it more fun. His version of fun is not everyone else's version of fun.
My version of fun is theme park fun, and his version of fun is I'm gonna kill everybody and have some fun about it.
Pretty much.
He also
Wait, is he made of waffles though?
He is not made of waffles. His name is Waffles.
he's
but
a
he's not made of
witch.
waffles.
He's full
Wait,
raggedy.
boys can be witches?
Lich.
So, Litch.
Oh, lich.
So L.
I thought you
Yeah.
said witch.
Yeah, no. So there actually is a fun book though that it's a graphic novel. I haven't read it, so I don't know if it's any good, but it's actually called The Witch Boy, and the whole idea is like
Oh, I've
only,
read that. I
yeah,
haven't
only
read that.
girls. I haven't read it yet, but I want it. It's on my
It's
reading list.
really good.
I've heard it's good.
I mean, you know, like girl power?
Mhm,
It's
yeah.
kind of like boy power, but it's really cool.
Yeah, really
like
cool.
in this world, girls rule the
Right,
world.
and so it's
And then
important.
so it's like boy
Yeah.
power.
Yeah, for sure.
Even though boys have almost all the power in this world.
In this
Do
particular.
not.
Yeah, you do.
Every girl in my school
Okay.
has a better grade
Hold
than
on.
me.
Yes,
Hold on.
because
You don't even want to know my grade. It's
All right,
worse than
let's
an
pause real quick to wrap this up. So, with this being said, October 7th, just remember that if you want to enter a scary story, October 7th is the deadline. I would recommend turning it in on October 6th, just because of the fact that I know on October 7th they have a time deadline, and I don't remember when that is. So it's important to make sure you get it in before October 7th, so that way they're not like, sorry, it's 5 o'clock and we said 4:45 or something. I
I'll
don't know
probably
what
go
the
down
time
and
is.
ask it after this. Like,
Probably a good idea, because I couldn't find the time deadline, but they almost always have one. So with that being said, they have the forms downstairs, because you do have to fill out a form. But yeah, so please, if you guys want to do a scary story, please do. I'd be happy to read over it. If you want to email your story to me, just because it does need to be, I believe it does need to be typed up for the actual contest. So if you want to finish typing it all up and send it to me via email, I'd be more than happy to give you my feedback on it and to edit it myself.
and you can type it out for us.
Maybe not type it out for you, just
Oh,
but
you were my friend.
I am your friend, but unfortunately I don't have all the time in the universe.
There were 2 people here.
But no, for sure. But I have 10 other people who are part of the Writers Club, even if they didn't come today. So if everyone did that, I'd be here for a while.
Oh well,
So-
there's only 2 people doing scary stories.
Quite possible, quite possible. But yeah, I would say try to get it typed up, just so that way it's easier for me to edit too as well, just because of the fact that
You can read it easier.
I can read it easier. Handwriting, I'm generally pretty good at deciphering, just because I have a lot of family members who have bad handwriting. But
Same.
so I've learned how to decipher handwriting, but it is easier if it's typed out.
Okay.
Yeah, and there also is a word limit. So if you type it out, it will be easier to tell how many words you've written.
Wait, there's a word limit?
There is a word limit,
That is
unfortunately.
how many words?
I don't remember how many words it is,
Hopefully it's over
but
like 1,000. 'Cause I'm gonna
yeah, no, it's definitely over 1,000. I don't know how many it is, but it's definitely over 1,000. With the word limit, though, just make sure you check on that, and that's why typing it up is important too, is because that way you can check and see how
I
many
would not want to
you've
count
got.
how many words I have.
For sure, it's hard. It's hard getting that line. All right.
It has to be a short story because I specialize in small stories.
I know. Unfortunately, it does have to be a short story just because of the fact that it's a short story
I'll
contest.
do a shorter version of the app that kills people.
But yeah, so it's an interesting concept as far as the short story stuff
And I
goes.
would just write about waffles.
I mean, if you'd like to, you totally can. I would
Yes.
enjoy that.
He's a nightmare. He is like the
He's a
absolute
nightmare.
most powerful thing. Like, my cousin made him almost impenetrable.
He
His
did.
vault that holds most of the magical artifacts in the entire world, like no one can find. There's bunch of different things, and his phylactery,
For
which
sure.
keeps him alive. You have to destroy it first to kill him.
You guys are trying to
Is
kill
the gates
waffles.
of heck.
Yep. He's literally evil. So I
Heck,
mean,
except the version of
Yep.
heck that is
yep.
If we-
the opposite of heaven.
If
Yep.
we break it, everything goes streaming free.
Exactly. So it's like you want
You
to
can
kill
either
him,
choose
but also
to kill waffles and have all the creatures of heck come out,
Yes.
or choose to keep waffles and keep all the creatures of heck.
exactly. So it's bad both ways.
Maybe we
Anyway,
could
all right.
capture
I'm
him
going to
in
stop
the
the video.
bottle
If any of you have
soul
questions about the scary story
distortion
contest, please
forever.
email me.